The broadcast is now starting.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, SharePoint nerds of all shapes and sizes, welcome to the first of the Pixelmill webinars for 2018 and today's offering of the future of intelligent communications. Thank you so much for joining us today. If you've joined us before in any of our webinars from 2017, you know we like to have some fun, you know what we bring to the table, so thank you for joining us. We're very excited for our series this year. We have a lot of really great speakers and topics coming up, but let's focus on today, all right? We've got some really great speakers going on today. As you see, Mr. Christian Buckley is going to lead the charge with Eric Overfield helping him out. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'll be around too. If at any time today you have any questions during the session, there is a questions tab and a chat tab. Feel free to throw those in there. I will be monitoring, and we will try to get those questions to Christian and Eric as we're going along. Don't be shy about asking questions. They love answering questions and helping out, so there's that. And without further ado, I will stop my jaw jacking. Let's go ahead and welcome our speakers for today, Christian Buckley and Eric Overfield. Take it away, guys.
Hey, thanks a lot. And Eric, are you there? Can you hear me?
I sure can. I hope you all can hear me as well.
Well, thanks for having me on, Eric. And I know that last time I did this the webinar, and you were off somewhere traveling and weren't able to participate.
Yep.
So
I am traveling.
Glad to have
today.
this discussion.
I am communicating out of Stockholm right now.
Oh wow. Okay. Well, hey. Well, thanks for joining. So,
thank you for being with us.
Well, this is an interesting topic that I don't know if people caught the last webinar that I did with Pixelmill, but it's a parallel topic and kind of an extension on that. So we're going to jump into some of what's happening around intelligent communications and the Skype and Teams announcement and what that means. But it goes well beyond that. And so when I was talking with Eric and his team about topics, I said, this is something that I'm increasingly talking about, and people need to understand that future of intelligent communications, it's not just about Teams. It's a lot more than that. So we'll jump into that here in a second here. But as far as introductions, and Eric, and I know you're sponsoring hosting this, but I put my slides first.
Of course.
But for those that don't know me, Christian Buckley, I'm the founder and CEO of Collab Talk. We are an independent research and technical marketing services company. Almost all of my customers are in the Microsoft ecosystem. I do have a couple customers outside of that. I'm getting very involved in the blockchain world, for example, and
yes.
So there's a lot of exciting stuff. I'm just a technologist at heart, so I'm excited by some of the advances that have happened there, and kind of harkens back to my supply chain operations background. But anyway, that's a different topic. But you can reach me, of course, here. Buckley Planet is my blog, is my my personal Twitter. Of course, my company is at collabtalk.com, and I've already said what it is, but we work with some great companies that are out there. A lot of partners. Would love to work with you if you need help with your technical marketing, or if you would like to get involved with one of our ongoing research projects. We've got 3 that are wrapping up here in Q1, 2 that are about to kick off, and then I do a lot of other stuff that's behind the scenes for other customers, research in depth for marketing teams. But I'd love to work with you. And Eric, over to you.
Sure. Those of you who I have not had the pleasure of meeting yet, my name is Eric Overfield. Thank you all for joining us. President, co-founder of Pixelmill, as well as a Microsoft MVP, regional director, done some authoring, writing, and all things SharePoint, Office 365. And it is funny you say blockchain, and I hope that really doesn't mean cyber currencies, but blockchain really has got to be, blockchain's got to be one of our topics coming up, because I'm telling you, it's the coolest thing I've seen in a long time, but not Bitcoin. I'm talking about blockchain. So anyhow, yes, very cool stuff. Yeah. Technologist, a geek for sure. Just kind of love all that stuff. And then I think you have a slide next on Pixelmill.
I do.
So we are, for those of you new to Pixelmill, we are based out of California here. We provide solutions for our customers that are looking to build custom portals, solutions, and applications on top of Office 365, SharePoint, particularly SharePoint Online, and Azure.
And I also say that, so Eric and I have been friends for a number of years. I'm trying to remember when we first started partnering on some of the local events. Like I helped co-found and launch the 2 SharePoint Saturdays in California originally, Sacramento and then down in Los Angeles. And then as I was trying to find local people, because I was living in Seattle, and Eric stepped up and took over a huge portion of what's happening in the West around those events.
2014, 2013? Yeah, back
Yeah,
in
something like
the
that.
SharePoint Saturday Sacramento days, and then the next year I took over Silicon Valley as well. Yeah, that was felt like a long time ago, but a lot of fun. Things have definitely
Yeah, a
changed.
lot of fun. Still going strong. Although I have to say, I still never got one of those Dirty Harry T-shirts. I'm just saying. That was a very cool T-shirt.
We've
So.
done some good shirts.
So let's start off with an overview here, and Eric and I have already agreed that we're going to interrupt each other and
We'll do our best.
talk over each other if we feel so passionate about it, and it's okay. But if people do have questions, and we will try and address those throughout. So there's of course this news that's out there. Microsoft talking about combining Skype for Business with Microsoft Teams, or that I guess more accurately, that Microsoft Teams is displacing Skype for Business as the new communications and collaboration tool within Office 365. And so we're all familiar with that and the time frame for that. And something that I said last time, and I've been saying since last fall, is that, so Microsoft has the new Skype for Business server 2019 that, coming out, and a lot of customers that have spent money, time building out that infrastructure piece of it, and it's a solid product, and they're happy with that. That we're concerned of, well, not all of that capability. There's not parity between what's in Teams and what's with the server product. No, there's not. And Microsoft came out, and I think that they learned a lot from SharePoint moving to SharePoint Online. Is that they need to support those customers that are on the on-prem for as long as it makes sense to support them. Until there's parity between the versions, that capability is there. The feedback from Microsoft is move when it makes sense for your organization. What they're asking hardcore Skype for Business servers, provider or customers to do is to start playing with Teams, to understand what it's there, what value it can provide, but not to move their businesses across to it and replace Skype for Business until it makes sense for their organization.
Yeah.
Which is the right message. And
I argue it's the right strategy for sure. And as we're seeing with SharePoint, I think that Skype is a really good example there, where the Skype for Business and the Teams team got under the same org within Microsoft. And I just don't see them moving away from Skype anytime soon, particularly for the telephony side. They're not going to rebuild that component where you can connect to the phone system. And they don't want to get rid of that, as far as I know. So yeah, they want to move over to Teams. I hope that we'll see Skype really move in, Skype for Business move into Teams, and Teams will absorb that. But the underlying code base is most likely still going to be Skype to do those specific aspects.
So it's actually, Eric, at the user group this week, the Utah user group, and so I'm on the board there, and invited in the Mark Allen, who is the founder of a comms company and Skype experts, Blue Panda, based here in the Salt Lake area, and asked a specific question. But I made the comment last fall, and I reiterated the comment this week at the user group, was that I think it's going to move a lot more quickly than people expect to see, that the parity will happen much quicker. Microsoft is moving at an astounding rate in their innovation. And I understand this is a different beast going to the telephony side of it. And I get it. There's a lot of components there. And I agree that it's not going to happen overnight. I know Heather was asking like overall time frame for this. Like the server product, the latest version coming out, I think it will still be for those companies that are using like the PBX, the telephony portions of that. That's the reason why they're on that solution. That it's still going to be at least a couple years before it's going to make sense for them to make a transition. But for a lot of organizations that were starting to go that direction or using some of the capabilities, I just think that the Teams is going to catch up and start adding those features very quickly.
But yes, but I guess what my point on is that when they add those features, most likely they're going to be using some of the code base from Skype for Business to do that. At least that's just kind of what I'm thinking. I'm saying.
Well, yeah.
And that's a good thing for those that are going to be doing that migration. And in X years, and I think 2 to 3 is going to be a minimum. Well, 2 to 3 we'll definitely see it in Teams. They're going to support on-prem well beyond that, I believe strongly. And 3 to 5
Right.
years, most companies, organizations are going to want to look to move their telephony system as well. They're going to realize they're missing out so much of the newest cool stuff because the breakneck speed at what Microsoft is evolving right now is insane. And when you look at it, it's almost like they're moving too slow for the industry as a whole. But for organizations to absorb the change, I'm on top of this every day. I can't keep up. I mean, it's
Right.
just so much. And so
Well,
we almost need it
I
to
think,
slow down a little.
and Eric, you made a great point too. And again, I'll draw the parallel with SharePoint is that with SharePoint, they made the mistakes talking about on-prem coming to an end.
Yeah.
What is the messaging now where Microsoft says there is no end date for SharePoint on-prem?
Yep.
They don't have one. There is no, hey, the next version will be the last version. There's none of that talk. It's gone away because the market has responded and said, I don't think so.
Yeah.
I think hybrid became a much bigger thing for SharePoint than Microsoft expected 2-3 years ago.
Yeah.
And so they shifted, they adjusted, they learned from that. And they applied some of that learning to this.
Yep.
Now, they are saying, I can't remember if the messaging officially, if they've said, no, this 2019 will be the last on-prem version of Skype for Business server. I think they did say that. However,
I have not heard that. Okay.
I don't know. Don't quote me. I don't know if that's the case. I believe that's the case.
Already
However, however, so Mike, one thing I think to your point is that Microsoft will not stop supporting the server version as long as the businesses, customers are using it and it makes business sense.
Yeah.
So I think it would be foolish for them just to put an arbitrary date out there saying, oh, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years from now.
Yep.
I think it would just be the wrong thing to do. And so I don't believe they're doing that.
Yeah.
I don't want to put words into their mouths.
I can see him pulling an InfoPath thing. Skype for Business is dead, but we're going to support it to 2029. Some weird things like that. Anyhow, let's move on.
Well, we're gonna talk about Teams and some of that. We'll kind of jump back and forth. But part of what's different about this from the last webinar that I did with Pixel Mill is around expanding on this topic of intelligent communications, intelligent collaboration. I've heard as well, but intelligent communications, the branding that's out there. And when you go and look, of course, you search at Microsoft and intelligent communications, everything around that is predominantly Teams based. Mm-hmm. But that's not it. That's not all of it. Teams may be the primary interface around the messaging today for a lot of these things. So when I love describing it as that single hub for teamwork, with all those pieces, but it's beyond that. It's the AI, the graph, LinkedIn, the cognitive services, all of the other data, SharePoint behind that. Mm-hmm. I actually have a session that I do, and I'll be doing, I think I might be doing it at the SharePoint conference in May. Can't remember which sessions I'm doing, but talking about how to better surface your existing SharePoint infrastructure through Teams.
Yep.
And of course, as we know, underneath the covers, what Teams is, how it's architected to build, essentially built on SharePoint and Exchange. And a lot of what is there are components. And this again came from the user group this week. So some of when you go and have a one-to-one conversation, when you have, of course, a meeting and the threaded discussion that's happening in Teams within a meeting, and how those conversations are being journaled and archived today is through Exchange. And my understanding is, and I don't know details around it, I'm not seeing architectural diagrams, but that some of those components are going to be moving over to SharePoint as well. But it's not like here's a new product doing everything different. Under the hood, it's SharePoint and Exchange. So when you're thinking about, well, how do I ensure that the conversations, the content that's being shared is compliant? It's like, well, when you're doing compliance, when you're doing e-discovery of your content within Teams, it lives in SharePoint. Therefore, those are the tools. That's where it lives. If you need to go and do e-discovery and compliance around auditing of the conversations that are happening in the system, then that's all through the Exchange workload. Hmm. So anyway, thoughts on that about the weaving communications into the apps and Teams that it uses across all of these other technologies?
Yeah, well, the issue that I have with clients that we talk to, or the people that I talk to, is where does Teams fit in? I think you're going to get to it, but you've written it here, which is why I want to address it, which is Teams is for teamwork. It's for that, and you're going to get to it, I know. It's for the inner circle.
Yeah.
It's for the people that you are working with within a team, and that's where I think the tabs just are so cool to have, where you're saying alongside AI through the tabs, through the bots that will add in things like cognitive services, so that you can communicate. I can communicate with Christian. I can communicate with Christian and Michael as a team. I could then communicate with the company while I'm trying to do like the company's part of my team, in the sense of like the bot company. Hey, HR bot, how many vacation days do I have left this year? And Teams facilitates that, but I can have the conversation with Christian. I can have it with Christian and Michael. I can have it. They're opening it up to have external users, although there's still a longer story there, but they're working on it.
Yep.
It's bringing email together where you have the one-to-one communication, or that one-to-many. It's then bringing Skype where you can then chat to people and share desktops and share those videos, and then adding in really what Slack started to do, where they saw there was problems with just Skype, and Slack had those larger channels, those larger networks that we could create. Teams fit that need, and it's amazing. I really do think it's a pretty big game changer for Office 365 and Microsoft, for sure.
Agreed.
And so the effort they're putting in the tabs is pretty crazy too. Yeah. They get it. I believe they get it.
And I completely agree with that. And so just for everyone too, the next, I think, 3 slides are more kind of foundational. Some of what Eric, you started to kind of jump ahead around there, but yes. But I think it is important to kind of explain that, especially the folks that are relatively new and trying to understand, how these pieces work together. But it really comes down to, that there's certain truths around, some of the digital transformation. Is another term, a hashtag. I did the finger movement of creating the hashtag.
Yeah.
But I need to use my words. I know. But there are no organizations that are out there. Very few, I'd say no organizations that are tied to a single platform, a single vendor, a single OEM. I don't know any organization that says, nope, we only use all Microsoft everything across the board. The reality is that those people then are blind to what a lot of their users are doing. And the reality is that Microsoft does not have expertise in every single area, every segment of your business. Mm-hmm. And I don't think they intend to be experts in every segment of those things. So you think about the next picture kind of helps illustrate that, if it'll move forward. There we go. That we have this dynamic, ever-changing workplace and all of these components. I always kind of go to the bottom left there around HR, and so my history, 30 years of working in IT, and help build portals and and I ran technical marketing systems, so CRM and all the marketing automation tools and backend and database management, all those kind of pieces, and going and working with different departments to integrate their core systems that were necessary for running their practice area, and into a larger system, this like OSS, whatever you want to, how you define that. So HR has certain tools and systems which are unique. They might be using a 100% cloud-based benefits platform, but the data that they're leveraging needs to use within that system needs to be shared or integrated with other systems. That their recognition and rewards, again, it lived kind of in between different tools and systems, maybe part of it inside SharePoint, and then pulling data manually or automated from that benefit system. That there's the new hire process helps automate the provisioning of systems and profiles and permissions across these different departments and systems. Some of that is inside of SharePoint, some of it's not. But you see some of the complexity here. It's difficult sometimes to understand, well, what do I need to know about these systems? What data is out there? And I know we're not going to get into like how the identity is shared. And Eric, you'd probably be interested in this conference I was at last week talking about blockchain identity management and actually individuals owning this, having control over their identity, which feeds to LinkedIn, Facebook, these other places. but that you control in that one source. Interesting topic, but we'll have to come back to that one. But you have all these systems that are out there that are creating data. So the question then becomes, and maybe this is very complex compared to your business, but you have all of these systems of record, all of the data that's being created. Are you optimizing how your business, your organization leverages this information? Is it discoverable? Can you go into one place? And I always say this about like organizations that are split between using email, Exchange, they're SharePoint centric, but there's some organizations that are using Teams, others that are using Yammer. And so you might have threaded conversations happening in 3 or 4 different areas with different technologies that are being stored in different silos. Can I go to one place and search on that content or search on a topic and find everything that's relevant across, and from this picture, everything that's relevant from the sales organization, HR, from the EMEA sales team, from the travel programs team, does that exist? And the answer is pretty much across the board globally, no. But that's where the future of intelligent communications and collaboration is going. Because when you start talking about these disparate tools and systems, whether it's third party, it's created as part of the Microsoft ecosystem, when you have the data that's created, that's data, that's conversation, it's voice, so it's audio, it's video, it's the text, it's content, it's data, transactional data that's happening, the chats across all of those things, the unifier of all of that is the graph. And then having ways to surface that data via the graph in a way that is intelligent and useful. And that, my long story short, is how I get over into Teams. And what's so exciting about that model, it's not saying, hey, I'm going to use Teams, stop using SharePoint. I'm using Teams, let's stop using Yammer, let's stop using Exchange. Nothing about that. Use the tools that make sense because it's relevant for your business, but do it in a smart way by having these data points, these systems tie back into the graph that brings it all together. Here's the next foundational one around groups. A lot of people, I think Microsoft made some mistakes when they started marketing, talking about groups. Because Eric, what did everybody think groups was about when they launched it?
Too many things. Well, that's for me.
Outlook-based conversations, maybe.
Yeah, it was email. I have to argue though that I think they didn't fully even know what they wanted. I think because it came out of the Exchange team, groups, they didn't really know what groups was. It was sort of just an email group. And they realized it could be so much more. So yes, the messaging was bad, but I think it evolved because they didn't fully even know they didn't know that they had struck on some gold.
I can see that. I can give them that. And the way that I always describe it here is that, and why Microsoft needed this, and I put it into a business marketing perspective, is that for years now, and Microsoft admits this, is that whenever they go and release a new product, that people would come back and say, how does this product fit with everything else that I'm already using? And they go back and shuffle and adjust and change messaging and all those kinds of things. But what was difficult is that different products that might go to the same target user. So we use SharePoint, but hey, just because I use SharePoint doesn't mean I don't also need to use OneDrive. It's a separate product. Is there some overlap of broader capability? Yes, different scenarios. Yammer's the same way. It's like, well, we've got these different tools. Why do we need Yammer? It's like, well, there's different scenarios, use cases for that. What groups helped do, though, and I always describe it as a construct, which is based on that Azure Active Directory. What is powerful about groups is now Microsoft can go and create new products. Anything they could just greenfield, find some new blue sky thinking, whatever the term is, create something that we're just not thinking about today, create it. But then if they then plug it into that construct of the group and say, now every group has this new product, you're not left guessing like, where does it fit? Like the permissions around it. There's some standards around that. You know that, well, I own a group of my 100 users. We use these products. We now have this new capability. And I believe that Microsoft is also getting smarter about making sure that with that new product release or feature release, that they're already thinking about not just, here's this capability, knock yourselves out. Oh, wait, we'll come back later with compliance and governance and shared backend and how it works with the graph and all that kind of stuff. And they're answering a lot of those questions up front and making sure that they have that. But having it as part of the group helps answer a lot of that new product introduction problem that Microsoft had every time they released a new product. And so now it's in, it doesn't mean that there still won't be some overlap between capability. It also doesn't mean that Microsoft won't go in there and say, well, you know what, we thought this direction and we might then merge capabilities or even stop creating a product because we've built up similar features and others that have wider adoption. But they have this construct in which they can now go in and innovate more quickly, deploy it in a way that people are able to understand like how it plugs in, at least on the back end, and where it fits.
Mm-hmm. We just had a great question come in, guys. I'm going to interrupt you just for a second. Any ideas on scripts to sync/update specific Office 365 groups to on-premise AD security groups for hybrid?
I do not have a ready answer for that.
I do not either.
Okay.
I know that there's conversation happening around that, but I'm not up to date on.
There are some PowerShell scripting that they've added to be able to manipulate and work with groups. So I would think you could do something manually with PowerShell and then you can script it. But I don't have the commands readily in front of me, and I haven't seen anyone specifically talk about that. I think that's a great thing for user voice. User voice is the ability where we can ask Microsoft for updates for specific products to see if there's any scenario around that. But gosh, I love the question. I think it's an important one. I can see the definite use case for it, but I unfortunately don't have an answer for that.
You know, I know that there are some conversations around that out on Microsoft Tech Community as well. So I would go search on Tech Community first. If you don't see what you're looking for on Tech Community, and then that's what I would go look at user voice second.
There you go. Yeah, Tech Community is a great place to have that chat, right? And user voice is where you say, hey, I would like you to change the product to do this. So I agree, Tech Community would be a great place. That's Tech Communities, Tech Community or techcommunities.microsoft.com?
Tech Community.
Yeah, I was just there an hour ago. Techcommunity.microsoft.com.
And I'll tell you that the product as well as engineering folks that own these features and these products are very active.
Very active.
So they are very responsive. So that is the right place to ask a question. And if you get a non-answer and people say, no, I don't know, or it's not in the roadmap, or then I would take it over to user voice. And then if you do add something, there's always kind of best practices. And thanks, Dave, for adding that. But the link up in the Q&A there of techcommunity.microsoft.com. If you do add something new to user voice, then go back over and let the tech community audience know that you've added it. Because some people don't know this, but all it takes are 10 votes for Microsoft to go in and respond through user voice. So they will investigate any new request that has 10 votes.
I didn't know the threshold was that low, but the important part is there is a threshold, meaning there's so many. Some of the products have thousands of ideas. Some of them are duplicates too. They can't look at them all. They just can't. So they really do trust us, the community, to vote for what's the most important. If things start hitting a couple hundred votes, people's heads start getting knocked. Like, why are we not addressing this? So
exactly.
Anyhow.
Well, and this is the last other foundational too, Eric. And I know just on your point there. And again, it just says that look, there will never be again, Microsoft is like literally less, there will not be one platform to rule them all. Like SharePoint is going, they're focusing on its strengths and then providing through those integrations on the back end so that where the content is stored, where conversations are stored through other solutions. And that's one of the great things about Teams is that when I'm interacting with my employees, and we need to, a project or a customer is active out on a public Yammer community, or maybe we have a private external community set up for that, we go add that community to the tab for that customer, so that when we're talking about customer XYZ, all of the SharePoint sites are surfaced through those tabs. The Yammer sites, the third-party tools and other systems that we're using, working with that customer, all surface through that one place. And so that you have context around the conversations that you're having. And because sometimes, you just want to have, like, it's Eric, you, me, two other people, we need to knock out this problem or this project that's come up, and we just need to go in, have that threaded discussion, be able to come back 3 days later, see that you and I have been having this ongoing discussion, and we can bring other people up to speed. That is not, Teams is not the right solution. That kind of conversation, sometimes it's appropriate to send and have that conversation via email, sometimes via Yammer. And so you are able to go and use the right tools for the right solutions based on those inner loops or those small teams. I know everybody hates it. I still use it kind of gently, mockingly, the high velocity team conversations. And then the outer loop is where, look, this is something where we want input from people across the company. Is email the right way to do that, to ask 1,000 people, 100 people their feedback on an idea? No, it is not. Is Teams the right place to have that? I would say that probably not either. No. That going out to something where people can go and follow hashtags and have conversation, it's a great discovery mechanism for that outer loop. And then email, no matter what products come out, I don't see email ever going away.
I never say never, but it's going to take a long time for email to go away.
I'll say not in my lifetime, but we'll see. All right, so I do want to get in. I know that we've got just under 30 minutes here, and talk about the Teams part of this. So yeah, there's a lot that's going on around that, and we'll talk about components of that. So the whole intelligent communications, if you go look at some of the articles, it's about this harnessing the power of intelligence. Hopefully I kind of set that up. Don't have a lot more to add about the components from that broader message, but to say that it's beyond having Skype meetings inside of Teams, or video meetings, audio or video meetings inside of Teams, that's just one piece of it. I was on a partner tweet jam this morning that Microsoft put on the partner team, and I made a comment, tweeted about multi-sensory computing. And Satya has talked about that. Maybe he doesn't phrase it quite like that, but this idea that we've got type, we have pen, we have touch, we have voice, we have video, we have AI, and kind of all of those different ways to go and collaborate. And we need the ability to surface those things, and then through the graph tie it all together and add that context. And there was a couple questions that was on that tweet jam around the information of things, IoT, which again, not a brand new, maybe the hashtag, the phrase, the term IoT is newer, but hey, I got involved back in 91, 92, working for a little company outside of Sacramento, up in Rockland, that built out and managed Hewlett-Packard's reclamation program worldwide. So if a store in New York City had a monitor, an HP monitor that got a scratch on it, seems slightly inefficient, but they would, at the time, they would ship it back to Rockland, California, where my team, my company, processed all of that, managed all of that. And so it went from an extremely inefficient program for them, but through like RFID technology and radio frequency ID tags, and getting smarter about how they stored the content as it was refurbished. It would then, before we started automating this, it sat on shelves for weeks, months, or even years. And we were talking about some high-end HP testing equipment that might have tens or hundreds of thousands of dollars price tag, the longer it sits on that shelf, the less value it has. And so we were able to help them turn that around because we had that intelligence about where things were, when they moved in the door, when they moved out the door, and started looking at performance of that. And that was in the early 90s. And it's advanced so much now.
But I think it's intelligent
projects there. Yeah.
I was thinking though, when this idea of this intelligent communication, when you talk about cognitive services and machine learning, yesterday I think it was via ZDNet, and I tweeted this out. An article was written that Microsoft just went through a mini reorg, and it appears to be that they're making a push on mixed reality. And one of the interesting things was they created a new mixed reality studio focusing on mixed reality in the modern workplace. I think that's going to be crazy. I'm not saying this is going to be to Teams anytime soon, but the way that we're going to be interacting in the workplace is going to be crazy. And the intelligent communication that will be augmented by mixed reality, but also through things like cognitive services and the machine learning of what we're doing. I think it's going to be a fun 5 to 10 years to see what's going to happen.
Agreed. I have to say that I'm pretty excited that Joel Olson and Noah Sparks are doing a topic at the SharePoint Saturday Utah happening on February 3rd, and we have a place set up. I'm on the board for the user group and helping organize the SharePoint Saturday, and we've got a space that'll be dedicated to VR so people could come and play with it. There's also a viewing area so you can watch people that have the gear on and are doing it, because that's sometimes as entertaining as doing the VR itself. But that question always comes up, is what's the practical business application of this technology? And I'm thinking of it, from in this context too, is, the typical information worker around that. And it may be that you're able to, I think of this every time, was like to have like a virtual meeting where you put on the goggles or the glasses and and then see other team members. And when that happens, because that's approaching quickly, then I definitely want to go get like a Yoda hat or something, because it makes me think of the Jedi Council. But
true. Along that lines, though, so we recently at Pixelmill decided that all of our team conversations were going to be video based. Oftentimes, when we're doing with clients as well, they might see us, but we might not see them. But I think human interaction is important. I think we've lost that via email, via just the chatting software we have. We've lost some of our humanity. And along that VR thing, like I'm thankfully going to get to go to SharePoint Saturday Utah as well. There's a plug for it. If you're going to be in the region, please do attend. It was a great event. If you're listening to this after February 3rd, 2018, well, sorry, you missed a good conference. So at SharePoint Saturday San Diego, Joel showed me some of the VR stuff, and he was in my session, and he recorded my session using one of those 365-degree viewers. There was a technical difficulty, but after the session, I put on his headset, and I was able to be in my room from his perspective, and I could turn around and see what they were looking. I could see them looking at me, and I could then turn around. I mean, it was really weird. But think about that in the digital workspace, where you can be virtually in a training session as it occurs. You can virtually be in like a leadership meeting or some sort of planning for the company, and you can look around and you can see what everyone else is doing and seeing and being a part of that experience. It's going to be crazy.
I'm just thinking back again, my days of working for Pacific Bell and Pacific Telesis in the mid-90s, and having to go between data centers in multiple locations, so Fairfield and in Sacramento and over in Hayward, and we had some data center down in Southern California that we part of my project was to help shut that down and consolidate systems, move it up north, and to drive back and forth or fly down Southern California for those projects. And now to have somebody that could walk through and virtually and do the review and out on the raised floor and look at that, I mean, that is fantastic. There's, I always tell a story like when 9/11 happened. I was in Tokyo, it felt very lonely and scary when all that was going down, being in another country, out there. But I was on doing video and audio chat in some of the early platforms. I'm trying to remember which one it was. It was not a Microsoft product that I was using from my hotel room, but to have that kind of capability, wherever you are in the world, and to be able to access the right information and what I always describe as surface the right information at the right time with the right people in context for the conversations that you're having. That's exciting. So it's not, maybe this sounds so futuristic that you're going to be wearing these goggles and seeing people in 3D around you. The practical side of that is that as you're sitting in a meeting, that the system goes and intelligently knows that you're in this meeting, pulls up the relevant information, suggests other content that you've not accessed yet, that you have permissions to, that are being reviewed or discussed or created by others within your company that are relevant to the topic. And that's the kind of when I think of those intelligent communications, automatically adding metadata, tags, context to the conversation that we're having with the chat that's happening, capturing the video, adding that into and referencing, so that if somebody goes and is doing just a discovery on a topic, it'd be like, oh, Christian and Eric were discussing this topic in this webinar 2 weeks ago, and then it jumps to that conversation, which has been transcripted, and actually jumps into the midway point in the webinar, so they don't have to hear all of our preamble, but to that relevant information in context of the project. Maybe they only care about the 5 minutes in the middle of a 1 hour video, and that the system intelligently identifies that and surfaces that information in context to what you're working on. That is exciting. That is what I see as that business application of that intelligent communications and collaboration.
And that's very possible. So, I mean, you just gave 2-3 for those coders that are out there. You just gave 2-3 good Teams tabs ideas. So surface graph, surface cognitive services as people are typing in a conversation, or as people are talking in a conversation through cognitive services or the text translation service, services. You find the big keywords. You then go to graph. You do a search, and one of the tabs is just constantly pinging graph. Hey, what's happened with these keywords? And it would be constantly updating, like, hey, here's these things that we found that's following your conversation. People might think it's a little creepy at first, because it's like, well, wait, you really listened to me. Well, yeah, well, you activated that app, that tab that would do that. And that was impossible not 6 months ago. But now that's probably an easy tab for someone to create, by the way, just to follow a conversation and do keywords.
So we've got the Amazon Echo that's downstairs in our family room, and my wife is constantly going over and unplugging it. I'm like, what are you doing? It's like, I go in, I use it every day. Like, I get up, I go out, and I've got a spin cycle downstairs, and I go do that and eat my breakfast. I work from home, when I'm home, and I pull on like news and stuff on there, and I'm like, she doesn't respond, and I look over, it's unplugged again. It's like, why are you doing that? She's like, well, I just don't want Amazon listening in on us. I'm like, okay, first of all, there's nothing that we do that's interesting enough for Amazon.
Yeah, that's my argument.
But two, I mean, it's passive technology, and that's a very different. It's passive. Maybe you could set it to be, active where it's doing that, or it can be hacked in. That's her fear. But again, I go back to point number one. We don't do anything. Why would somebody hack us?
Well, exactly. What do you really do?
I'm not sitting there in the family room reading out my credit card numbers. But within these systems where it's not passive, where they are actively going, the graph is capturing this. I mean, you set it to actively go and search and find this. But with the machine learning, it's getting more and more intelligent. If it knows that Christian always goes in after these meetings and captures these notes and then goes and looks for the relevant attachments and puts the links in, where the system can become intelligent and then start automating and doing that manual task that I was doing. To do that kind of automation, optimization of my personal activities based on my patterns, that's what we're talking about. That's what we're moving towards.
And of course, the organization can control all that, right? I mean, that's the point. You would turn that on or off if you wanted. And most email communications and most Teams communications are recorded by the organization anyhow. It's like it's a concern that I think people would be blowing out of proportion if it really was an issue.
Well, on the other side too, it is important distinction too is that we're talking about permissions-based systems.
Yes, absolutely.
That you are security trimming throughout all of this.
Yes, absolutely.
That's an important point, though. Yeah.
And you're right. I want to bring that up because you'd said it before. You'd said that. You'd said something like if you have permissions, and that's a big point here. Graph is smart enough. I always like to reiterate it to anybody in case they're new to this whole thing. Graph is smart enough to know what you have access to, and it will only give you access to things. That being said, there's the other side of the coin where your CXO is not the most technically smart person and put something on a team site that no one knew about that has permission to read all, and it describes everyone's salary. And that happened before, and that is a problem where you have to trust the system, but you have to then teach the people to do it right because there's got to be good IA there. There's got to be good information architecture. There's got to be a good training, and those CXOs need to be taught how to do it properly.
You know, every time there's an advance in the technology, and we saw this as SharePoint Search started working, and suddenly people complain. It's like, no, search is broken. Where we're seeing data that we're not supposed to be seeing. It's like, no, it's working the way it should.
Correct. True. Absolutely.
Yeah, your information architecture needs to be refreshed.
Exactly.
So I had some other information, probably a little out of order here, but around the Skypes and Teams infrastructure. I think we made this point. People understand, that it's this enterprise grade. I mean, when Teams was built, they didn't go and just port over some code from Skype and others. They used the code base, but they built it from the ground up to be enterprise grade, and they removed some of the capabilities, I always refer to as the bolt-on, features, things that weren't native to that as they built it out, so that it's architected from the ground up as a new product based on that. So it's, that I think is an important point, that they are thinking about this future of intelligent communications, and it's, the increasing importance of graph and of the cognitive services and the machine learning as we look at the data that's being generated, the broadly worded term of data, all of the digital assets that are being created, no matter what the source of the collaboration or communication, that it's scalable, that there's measurements around that, and that as we use the system more and more, that it learns from that and then helps optimize and surface things in context.
Mm-hmm.
Let me jump, and I know that like we did last time, ran out of time with some of the roadmap stuff, and I do want to also jump to. So again, some of the same points. I think we've covered most of this. In the middle there, Teams will help organizations surface and utilize content and data residing within their existing infrastructure. And I can't make that point enough for people that think of Teams as an either or to the other tools they're using versus an in addition to, as it makes sense.
I would just say I think Teams will become the core team communication client. Personally, I think it's going to be. I think email will still be heavily used for a lot of external stuff. Maybe in the next couple of years they'll figure the whole external piece out. Maybe they'll figure it out this year, but it'll take time, I think, to get people totally into it. But that's just my opinion. I haven't been told that.
Yeah. Well, and the other thing too is I have had a lot of people. This is why I started doing this session on leveraging SharePoint through Teams. Is the fact that people are coming and saying, well, does it mean, like, we were planning out our next version of our intranet on SharePoint, should we be now looking at Teams as our intranet? And my gut reaction to that is no, it's not an intranet. But so my company, there's 5 of us, it is essentially our intranet, because while I'm still using SharePoint, and it's in every project because it's behind the scenes within Teams, and I've gone and specifically built out team sites and communication sites, as part of that. But for the size of our organization, Teams is just the right way. It fits the way that we work in our style. If I were 100 people, 50 to 100 people, and wanted that formal intranet, then SharePoint would be my first stop to build that out.
Yeah, completely agree.
Let's see, then beyond that, okay, so one thing Microsoft uses an example, which I think is a great way just to kind of describe like where this is going, what this actually looks like. And I expanded on their example just slightly, that before a meeting, during a meeting, after a meeting, how this intelligent communication works. And so before is like, as I used earlier, is that the system understands, Christian, you're going into this meeting on this topic, here's the relevant stuff, here's the people that are there. Hey, there's this new person that's part of this team. This is where they fit within the organization, but it's all within context, so I'm prepared for that discussion. Once in there, whether it's in person and people sitting around with laptops, or we've got some people that are dialing in, it has that ability that you see it, we record the conversation, capture that, the discussion, the side topics that are being captured, maybe the shared OneNotes, from that, the dispersing all of the relevant documentation that's being shared for that project. And then after that, capturing all of that, distributing that out to everyone where it's relevant, again, based on the permissions, people that weren't participants in that meeting, but again, have access to that content, can then find that through discovery. And then on the compliance side, everything that was done there then is accessible through search and e-discovery. And so that is where it's just getting to be this more streamlined, intelligent, activities that are all made possible because of these things bringing together the cognitive services, the graph, and then these tools. Some of the other things, just to wrap up on that, the built-in intelligence. So we've talked about each of these things, cognitive services. And this is great too. It's not, discovery shouldn't be a destination. Discovery is being slowly integrated into every app and solution. So that, and this is actually something that people aren't aware, when Microsoft announced like Delve, like I don't think Delve as a destination, as an icon within the app launcher is going away. But the roadmap for what Delve is, it's not about going yet another homepage to go to find this information, but that Delve-like experience is being added to every application, because that's where it's relevant, is where it's in context in the workloads where we're working, rather than having to go to a destination, a tab, a website to go discover things and then back to where you're working. And I know there's a question Kunal has around this, is I have permission to see certain content. How does Graph make that different? It doesn't. What it does is it ties together, adds context to the content you have permission to see. Mm-hmm. So the way that search, overly simplifying this here, folks, but search works is that, classifies information, and based on search terms and classifications, you go and find that content. So if you know what you're looking for, if you then use the right search terms to find it, if the people who own the content classified it properly and added the metadata for it to be found, then all of those things coming together, you get a search result. What the graph does is it understands the relationships of it, knowing that you didn't use the right keyword, it doesn't have the right classification, yet it's intelligent enough to know that people that are interested in what you're looking for have also had a high concentration of activity. The pattern was they went to this other source, which has other similar patterns, keywords, word structure, sentence structure. You have permission to see it, therefore surfacing this content that you may not have otherwise ever found. That's why the graph is powerful.
Yep, but it doesn't change your permissions, which is still important to know. Yep.
Nope. So the other stuff, I mean, I love this, the transcription translation. We are so close to having the Star Trek Universal Translator. I kid you not. That I can actually, I've not done this yet. Eric, I don't know if you've played with this, but it actually, somebody could be sitting in a session where you're talking, looking at their laptop. You could be, live streaming, or have even a closed broadcast with the camera on you, and it's translating it for people that don't speak English. I'm so excited about trying this out with some of my international events that I'm doing, so that language doesn't have to be a barrier. And then, of course, the transcription of these things, it's another powerful thing. Like we had this whole webinar, and to go in and be able to transcript it, capture it, and so that, and that's part of what happens behind the scenes for the graph and for these other technologies, to know that, you know, at the 37-minute mark, Christian and Eric discussed that topic. Here's where it is. Here's the transcript. Jump you to the video where, you know, in the video where it is within like stream.
Yeah.
And then, of course, there's the auto-gen of the notes of you know, you can design it so that as you're provisioning new sites, as certain actions automatically happen after a meeting, and there's certain things that you can do to automate based on your organizational methodology or your best practices. To say that, you know, hey, every time we, just like you do with provisioning of a new SharePoint site, you say every new team site, you know, has this structure. That has these parts to it, so that if I'm looking at a product that's being worked on with somebody in Seattle and somebody that's working on a second product and they're based out of Germany, but I know where all of the artifacts are, what's included, where the notes are from the meetings, from all of that data, because we're the same company, there's just two different products, and I want that automated. Well, you can make the system much more intelligent in what it does before, during, and after, based on those practices. And I think a lot of this too, I've got through and talked about it. You know, I've got some links at the end around, you know, Microsoft's vision here. One thing I did want to point people towards is around the developer opportunities. There's actually a link in the resources at the end where there's an article that came out in the last few days from, on the partner side, from Gabriella Schuster and team, around like where there are partner opportunities around a lot of this strategy. And if you're not a partner developer, if you're just an end user or in an organization where you're a customer of these things, but want to understand where Microsoft, you know, like their solutions end and where partners are stepping in to fill certain gaps and doing things, it's always smart to understand what, you know, Microsoft is pushing the partner community to work on and do. So, you know, tabs, bots, and connectors, but actionable messages, natural language around that, activity feeds, and the portability of those activity feeds, be able to have that and consume that elsewhere. The compose extensions, the Office store, I mean, all of these different areas where people can get involved and start doing things and adding to the you know, the solutions that are being surfaced through Teams. And Eric, I don't know if you had, I know we've just got a couple minutes, so just in interest of time, but anything to add to that from the developer standpoint?
There's
Any other guidance?
many developer opportunities. I don't even know where to start. There's just so much.
Yeah. Well, you know what, and again, there's the roadmap that's out there. You can find this information in a lot of different places. So once again, round of time, I'm not going to walk through these one by one, because I do want to jump down to some of the resources. There's great data that's out there. Of course, you go through with success with Teams, bookmark that, and that's going to be that single source to go and find the stuff that they're constantly adding to and expanding that. There's that page, what it looks like. So case studies as they add that, content, you know, templates helps to walk your organization through, onboarding users as part of that, but also feedback on all these different areas. But what I would say, if you are interested in, so the link at the top is the intelligent approach to building your AI practice. That is the new article, and there's a new AI practice development playbook that Microsoft has released. Definitely take a look at that. If again, you're on the partner side or looking at building some custom solutions, some just great resources for that. And then I've got the links down towards the bottom, second from last, looking ahead, opportunities for partners, and then that link again to the developer program. But there is so much opportunity. This is one of the most exciting areas to be involved with. Eric, I know you agree with me on that, that around Teams, and I mean, there's tons happening with SharePoint. SharePoint and Teams, that's like my space. I'm excited to still be a part of it and MVP within it, and to be learning about this stuff and exploring what customers and partners can do. It's just an exciting time and exciting space.
Yeah, yeah. There's been a great revigoration in the last last couple of years, and I agree. Just the pace the speed is going good. What Microsoft is doing great. There was one question kind of going back a little
Yeah.
bit. It was a previous topic, but one of the things we're looking for is an ideation platform, things like user
Oh yeah.
voice, but for the enterprise, something on-prem.
There are there are vendor solutions that you can go that specifically. If you go search for SharePoint ideation, there are a bunch of products that are out there. Some of them more advanced than others. And look, I've looked at a few. My last company had a solution for that. Different price points around that. That could be just a process with some templates, and others that have a very detailed, from a technology standpoint, to automate those activities. Look, I'd be happy to if you drop me an email to share you a little bit of like what I know and point you towards a couple of them. But I've blogged on that in the past. So if you go search on ideation and Buckley Planet or my name, then you'll find some of those articles and where I mentioned a couple of the solutions.
Now, and what we've done at Pixelmills to a certain degree is we use Teams for that. Now, we're a smaller company, but we've got a channel for this kind of opportunity. And then if something starts to get enough chatter, we go create another channel for it, for an idea. And as soon as we spin up that channel, we've now got SharePoint behind it. We have OneNote behind it. So we can start building in the assets necessary to flesh that out. We've got a little chat area where people can then join into it. So they can start to be involved in that. They can start getting tagged on it, getting updates on it. I want to use the word, but it's not fair. That's the poor man's version. It worked very well out of the box, didn't cost anything more, but it works really well. We
use Teams for that, and Yammer is also a solution that works for that. But if you are looking for a more specific methodology, something that's programmable methodology to go in there, structured around specific requirements, there are solutions that are out there that are built on SharePoint and are good tools.
Teams can integrate with other outside platforms. I don't know about with uservoice.com, but I know that Teams through their tabs can communicate with all kinds of stuff. Microsoft is trying to pre-integrate lots of different things, including things like Dropbox, I believe, or Box, or one of them. So they,
And there are bots that are out there that are generally available. So that you can have that are out there, looking for information and bringing it back to your teams and reporting on that. But you can certainly, if you're tracking certain topics, you can have just a tab that out to that, your additions to user voice and be able to just to track it from that team site.
That's cool. I did not know that.
There's a question that just came in. Do you think Teams could integrate with something like user voice?
Yes, that was my response. Where I don't know exactly with that directly, although Christian's saying you can have it track some of that stuff.
Well,
but the point is Teams can be configured or can be built to have a new tab that can communicate with most anything with an external API, which is pretty cool.
Right.
Yeah.
And I was just saying that there are bots that are out there that once you have that on there, and the bots can then be listening and looking for keywords and activities. So there's solutions that are out there.
Yep.
Cool. That's all I've got. Thanks for attending and thanks for having me, guys. Thanks, Eric, for participating.
Thanks for coming back. Anybody who's still on the call with us, feel free to throw your questions at us if you still have any more. I know these guys, as you can tell, like to talk about this topic. They're very passionate about it, so don't be shy about your questions about any of this stuff. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Christian. Thank you, Eric. That was some really, really great stuff. It's great to hear.
Thanks a lot. Thanks for having us.
Yeah.
And we'll have a recording of this too, posted shortly.
Yes.
Yep.
Exactly. Yeah. Once this is all done, we'll have the recording up in case you need to go back and catch something again or anything like that, or see something that Christian had up on one of his slides. We'll have that up too.
And the slides will be posted here in about 5 minutes, and I'll send you guys the link so you can send that out as well.
Exactly. Yeah. We'll also have that in the recap and as well. And if there's any follow-up question, guys, after this, please feel free to send them over to us. Over to us at the Pixelmill team. We have a question, or just a comment from Starkey, who's been asking a lot of these questions. He says, FYI, here is what user voice says about integration with Yammer. And he sent us a link for user voice integration.
Uservoice.com/integrations. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll include that in the in the recap as well for anybody to check out if they have any curiosities about that. While we're still giving people a chance to ask some questions, guys, where can we find you next? You guys are both out in the community talking a lot, presenting the similar kinds of knowledge. Where can we find you guys next?
Yeah, I'm doing a bunch of stuff online. I've got one of my monthly tweet jams next week, talking about project management and the blurred line between project management and collaboration. And then I've got some webinars and things that I'm doing, but my next event is the SharePoint Saturday Utah on February 3rd, and then I'll be at the travel out to Branson, Missouri for
that'll be fun.
Ooh, yeah.
Yeah, where I'm running an all-day workshop on Microsoft Teams. So if you're looking for training and onboarding, it's actually Owen Allen and I that are doing that training, and come on out. It's a low-cost event, a beautiful location out there. I'm excited to go to that.
Yeah, it's like $100, $200, right? Really cheap.
Yeah, it's really inexpensive, and it's an expensive location to get to as well. So.
Good. Well, for those of you in the Finland area, come join me at SharePoint Saturday Helsinki in 2 days. If not, hop on a plane. Norwegian Airlines is flying people out cheap because no one seems to want to come to Sweden or Finland right now. Go figure that. It was only 0 degrees or freezing out here yesterday. And then I'll be at SharePoint Saturday Utah as well. Christian, looking forward to seeing you. I think doing the same thing as you, Branson, and then I know I've got a break personally until the May time. Yeah.
No, I've got a bunch. Because we're at the up at Microsoft headquarters for the MVP Summit after that, and I turn around and I'm in DC. I've got it heats up a bit.
Yep. Good.
There you go. Thank you, guys. Looks like I haven't seen any more questions come in, so we'll go ahead and wrap it up. Thank you, everyone, for joining today. As Christian said, you can find him all over the place, but on Twitter at Buckley Planet, or he runs Collab Talk, so check them out. You can find Eric on Twitter at Eric Overfield, at ericoverfield.com. If you have any other questions for him, hit him up as well. You can reach out to the Pixelmill team, pixelmill.com, or at Pixelmill team on Twitter. My name is Michael Wells. I'm the Partnerships and Community Manager here at Pixelmill. It has been my pleasure to have you all here today. Thank you so much for your time. Our next webinar is going to be hosted by Eric Overfield with some fun topics about development in Office 365 and SharePoint, so keep an eye out for that announcement. Thank you again, Christian and Eric, for joining us and hosting today, and we will see everybody down the road.
Thanks a lot.
Bye, all.